Dark444, hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
So I'm a Tankie,
Okay.
and I'm morally taking issue with the positions that you're taking in regards to the Palestinian issue.
If you're a tanky, I can see why, but you want to elaborate?
Sure. So do you believe in a one-state solution or do you believe in a two-state solution?
It's hard to say because it seems like both groups don't agree on either of them. I think two-state makes more sense easily.
No, morally.
What?
Morally.
Oh, well, I
We're
mean,
talking about it
As a
morally, right?
Western multiculturalist, I'd love the idea of both of them living as a binational state with equal rights for Arabs and Jews, but I don't think it's happening anytime soon. I don't think either of them want it either. So, uh,
Well, yeah, that wouldn't. So what they want is irrelevant in regards to the moral question, right?
It kind of no, what they want does
What ought to
matter,
happen, right?
kind of, because I can't impose my morals on them, right? I think one state solution, like if
Why
that was
not?
imposed on them from the top
You
down,
impose that on.
you would get a civil war like immediately. I don't know. Two states makes more sense to me.
Yeah, but getting a civil war would be relevant to the moral position, right? So you would say, well, I think morally supporting this position is the correct one, independent of whether a civil war happens or not, right? So Crimea should return back to Ukraine, right? Even if it would, independent of everything else, right?
Yeah,
Right. So
but the
the
difference
facts
is
to the
that
situation doesn't matter, right? So
the difference is that Crimea was unilaterally invaded and annexed by Russia. Okay, and the way to solve that
that's what
moral issue is for them to
outside.
just leave. When it comes to Israel Palestine, I don't think, as far as moral claims to the land, you can say both sides have their moral claims to the land or whatever the fuck, because you know the Israelis are not going anywhere. Let's face it, Palestinians are not going anywhere. But if it's in the interest of both groups to just Palestinians get this part, Israelis get this part, I don't see what would be immoral about that compared to the Crimea thing.
Well, the morality part of it would be that one side got completely kicked out of their homes, right? So we would say that it's ethically a very moral position for those people to be able to return, and some other homes built for
Well, you could have
Israelis.
that.
Do you not think that
You could
that's
have that.
better?
Well, the
Having a one country where people can freely move.
So, as far as the right to return to their homes or their homelands, typically in international law with refugees, seems to be that people return to their homelands, like their home country. But like the West Bank and Gaza is Palestine. Those people were kicked out of Palestine. So you could have two states and people could go to the West Bank or Gaza and they could live there.
Yeah,
Or they could get naturalized because that's a human right as well. Right? Yeah. Hmm?
yeah, I agree with the descriptions that you just made, but they're irrelevant to the ethical part. So even if international law didn't exist, right, that doesn't mean that those people shouldn't be able to return back to their stolen homes, right?
When you say stolen homes, you understand that when we talk about homes, the homes were destroyed. They're not there anymore. Okay, we're talking about homeland. Like refugees don't typically, I don't think it's very normal for a refugee to reappear 50, 75 years later, or their grandchildren to reappear and then just put the key in the lock of the old house and get it back. Right? That's not usually what happens. Normally, if they go, even if they go back to their home country, they go into like they get resettled into a new place. I don't think there's anything wrong with that either, like
Yeah, but
morally or practically. Yeah.
why should it be that?
Hmm?
So, for example, let's see, why do you not think that the Israeli should be reality?
Why do I not think what? Sorry.
Why should it be, for example, the people who are the victims? Why do you think, right, that an Israeli shouldn't be evicted from the home and moved into a newer home, and the Palestinians be able to return to their area? Why should it be that the Palestinians have to reallocate, even though the qualifier in addition here would be that the Palestinians were the victims of that?
Because I don't think people have an innate right to a particular piece of land, especially if we're talking about like essentially a right that would be based on like Ottoman documents from decades or like over 100 years ago, potentially. I, I think when you have, unfortunately, fact of human society is that when we have wars and people get displaced, I think the idea of trying to restore people to some particular arbitrary point in time where people lived somewhere, doesn't make any sense. I think trying to achieve it will only result in fighting and bloodshed. I don't think it makes anyone particularly happy, and there's a good reason we don't do it. Like the Greeks who got kicked out of northern Cyprus to go and had to go south. Like, yeah, they're probably not going to get their homes back, but like they've got other homes now. The Pakistanis who had to leave, the Muslims had to leave Pakistan, don't get their homes back, but they have citizenship. They can live somewhere, and then their future generation just gets to live as normal people. Seems like a better way to do it than trying to restore everyone to one particular point.
Okay, but that doesn't answer the question because it's just a statement of facts, right? So when we're talking about a moral in this case, right, you're saying that morally, like for example, Crimea would be Russian because it's 8 years now that those people have taken the area over. So would you say that morally, if Crimea would be Russian now, and we should condemn Ukrainians for saying that? I don't think so, right?
No, but the thing is with Crimea, we're talking about place, first of all, that was much more recent than Palestine. And we're not talking about, you're conflating an annexed territory with a recognized country. And we're comparing refugees returning to their homes versus their homelands. For example, you talk about Crimea, the Crimean Tatars who were deported by Stalin got to go back to Crimea. I don't think the best answer for them necessarily was for them to try and find exactly which house they were kicked out of or which acre of land they were kicked out of and just getting to seize that part back. I don't think that makes sense either. Because you're talking about morals, right? Part of morality, I don't know if you believe this is a Tankie, but part of morality also comes from outcomes, okay? So if something causes like a lot of harm, like hundreds of thousands of Crimean Tatars returning in the 90s to go and seize back every single square foot of land that they had, that might not necessarily make anyone better off. That would result in a shitload of fighting and bloodshed when you could just like build new houses, okay? And then everyone has it easier. Or do you believe that anyone who's ever been kicked out of their house, do you believe anyone who's ever been kicked out of their house has an innate right back to that house or back to that acre of land, like the fig tree or whatever?
If you're talking about it in an idealist case, sure. But the thing is that our moral decisions are sort of on a practicality as well, right? So, for example,
that's what I just
if we're going to say, for example, the Tatars, I think they should be, they should be able to return to their houses, right? But, right, I think that you can create new houses for the people who have already settled on that land. So I don't think that you should create new houses for the people who have been the victims, like, for example, Palestinians, but you should create the houses for the Israelis.
Okay. Oh, so they should move the Israelis out of the houses and then put the Palestinians back. Okay, I got you. Yeah, okay. I know what you're saying. Okay. So basically, your position is that Palestinians have, they have a moral right to each, area of land that they were kicked out of, right? To each, acre of land. Can you answer that just yes or no, please?
Yeah, and you can then build land for other...
Okay. Do they pass that right on to their kids? Say if they die a refugee, do they pass the right on to their offspring?
Sure.
Do they pass the grandkids?
Sure.
Great grandkids? And does this ever end?
If you don't get their houses back, no.
Okay. So when Jews claim that they are when Jews claim that they are returning to the when Jews claim that they're returning to the hills of Judea and Samaria, if they were able to actually point their DNA back to a particular square or an acre of land in Judea, Samaria, regardless of who's living there, they should be allowed to go and grab it?
Well, depends on what you mean by someone who's Jew. I don't think it's only genetical. I think it's also cultural. I don't think that the Jews living in the United States have any connection to the people that lived there 1,000 years ago.
You don't think Jewish people in Europe have connections to Israel, to the land? I'm going to clarify the question, okay, because I don't think you understood it.
It's not only genetic.
I'm going to clarify the question. If a Jewish person is able to prove genetically or whatever the fuck else that, or even just a land document, if a Jewish person was able to prove that they came from a particular place that is now currently, I don't know, Nablus or Ramallah, should they be allowed to seize that land back? Since right of return is apparently you can inherit it forever, or does it stop somewhere?
Well, I think that the question by this Jewish person is that I don't believe in genetics. I believe in the cultural one. But if it's culturally the case, yeah, sure. I think the person that's living there should be given another home closer to that area.
Okay. I feel like there are probably a lot of Palestinians who would be a bit upset with that argument, but okay. Do you know the people who, you know how like, do you know
example,
do you know would you say this about the Middle East as well then? Because a lot of Jews lost a lot of property in the Middle East, Mizrahi Jews, in the 50s and late 40s. Should they be allowed to go and evict whoever lives on there and take their places back?
Evictions on principle. I just think that there should be other homes built for other people who are evicted.
So, like Ben-Gvir, who is descended from Iraqi Jews, should be allowed to go to Iraq and evict whoever might be living on the house that his family had to leave.
Sure, because that was immoral, right? It was immoral that his family had to leave there, right?
Yeah, but it's also immoral that the people who live there now have to get punished for a crime they didn't commit.
Yeah, but it's not a moralization against them, right?
Well, okay, you can say that, but they're losing their they're getting evicted. You can say it's not a moral claim against them, but they're getting evicted. They don't give a fuck. They're suffering for it. They're suffering for a crime they didn't commit.
What? There's many people. I think their suffering should go away by building another home, right? That's the point.
But why does... I'm just wondering what quality there is in a human being that gives them an innate right to a particular piece of land. This is like a sacred level of private property that would go back like...
Ethical position. I mean...
What if they were renting? I don't think most of the 700,000 Palestinians who got kicked out in 48...
It has to do...
I don't think most of the 700,000 Palestinians who got kicked out of their land in the Nakba were property owners, were they? I think most of them would have been tenants.
I don't know whether the property owners or not. It's the morality that matters.
You keep saying the morality. I'm asking you.
Here, right?
But I'm asking you morally. So why do they? Where's that moral right?
Right.
That moral right to the point that you get to actually hurt other people who didn't do any of the crimes that happened. And even if it's like the offspring of the person who the crime happened to, I'm wondering where this morality comes from. That's a really strange moral standard to me. I don't understand that.
What do you mean? We're talking about an abstract subjective morality, obviously.
Yeah, but I'm asking you to explain that morality to me. I'm asking you. I don't know if I'm a moral objectivist. I tend to base my morals on on outcomes. That's why I believe in like outcomes with, I guess, like long-term some rules. That's why the outcome of imposing your moral standards would be fucking horrible.
Do you think that fucking... Yeah, but we're also deontologists. For example, do you think that
I'm not a
raping a child is on principle bad?
Yep.
Okay, so you think that raping a child is okay if it puts them in a positive outlook?
Yeah, it's still bad. That's still okay with consequentialism, though. Do you know what rule consequentialism, though? Do you know what that is? Because even in that
consequentialism, right?
Because even in that niche situation, okay. So you're saying that even if there was a case where you could abuse a child, but it would have good outcomes for them, you can still oppose it because you don't really want to live in a world where people are ever abusing children, because almost always, pretty much always, as far as we know, it's always going to be bad. Just because it might be one or two exceptions, that doesn't mean you shouldn't wipe it out as a rule, because as a whole, it's a bad thing to do. The world would not be a nice place if people thought this was okay to do, if they thought it could produce good outcomes for some people. That's why, consequentially, that rule can still apply, even in niche cases.
It would be a nice... Yeah. What if it would? What if raping a child would lead to a better world? Right? You wouldn't oppose that, right? You still have to...
If it would lead to a better world, not as a rule, no. The world is general. So usually the problem with raping children is that the children suffer for the rest of their lives. The problem with raping children and allowing people to do that is that the children suffer. So it doesn't lead to a better world innately, unless you're redefining the entire concept of child abuse.
No, all you're saying is well, raping a child is bad because it leads to bad outcomes. And I'm saying that you would be fine with that if it has positive outcomes, right? In a hypothetical.
Okay, this is the argument that you're doing to me, okay? You're basically saying that if good outcomes are all that matters, why can't a doctor murder one healthy patient and harvest 5 of their organs to save 5 people who would otherwise die, right? Why can't they do that? Because the outcome is you save 5 people and you kill 1, right? But then I would say that that's still not acceptable, because if a doctor did that, if it was normal for doctors to do that, in the long term, no one's going to ever trust doctors. No one would ever go to the hospital, and then more people would die. Do you understand how you can have like a consequenceless framework, but still
Yeah, what if,
live in a world where there are rules that shouldn't be broken because the breaking of those rules and the non-enforcement of those rules would lead long term to worse outcomes.
yeah, I understand that, but what if it led to positive outcomes? You wouldn't oppose it, right? In the hypothetical scenario.
Well, then we would live in a different world. Like, what? How does that work? So, So, with sticking in the real world, can you just map that out for me? How would that work? How would it work? Where are we talking like magic? Like, if you abuse a child, then like aliens come down, and then 99% of all the other children in the world will have happy lives for the rest of eternity. Like, and we'll eliminate bone cancer, and we'll eliminate all the other child abuse in the future. Like,
hold on. What I'm talking about is a hypothetical within your moral framework. Okay, so I'm saying that if you, right, on principle, have no objection to something happening, an action is an action inherently in of itself wrong? No, right? Because you're a consequentialist, right?
Yeah.
Right. So a raping of a child cannot be wrong in of itself. The action cannot be wrong in of itself, right?
You can assume that, but the problem is that that doesn't exist, right? Like, it always has consequences if you have a child. Like,
so the child doesn't exist.
have you been like waiting to use this trick that you learned on the? I'm saying that you're saying in and of itself, if you disregard the consequences, like, okay, you can say that, but we don't live in a world where acts don't have consequences. Actions have consequences. So yeah, if you could like, how does that even work? Like, if you punch someone in the face, but they don't feel it, they don't know it happened, it doesn't hurt them, it doesn't leave any mark, then yeah, you could probably do it because like there's no consequences. But that's not the world we live in. So why would you apply that? Did you just like learn did you just learn like
positions?
Yeah, I know, because you discovered deontology like 5 minutes ago on Reddit, and now you're trying to prove it by using retarded fucking child rape analogies. And I thought we were talking about right of return. What the fuck, man?
You brought it up.
You kept saying moral. You kept saying it's moral.
You just said where morality comes from.
Yeah, because you kept on saying, "Oh, it's moral." Well, I'm saying, why do you think it's moral? Where did you invent this rule that if a tenant gets kicked out of their house, then they get to pass the right to those that acre of land down for eternity, and they can go and evict whoever lives there 100, 200, 1,000, 2,000 years later, and that's apparently fine. But the person who lives there, I guess, because they got punished for a crime they didn't commit, they just build a new house for them.
Right.
And this is the normal world to live in. Yeah, I'm going to ask you about your morals, because your morals make no fucking sense. And you don't apply these morals to anyone, I guarantee. And I guarantee you don't apply these morals in any other situation apart from for Palestinians, like for right of return. You've never made this argument for Pakistanis or for Hindus or for Greeks or for Turks or for like fucking people in the Balkans or for Germans. You've never made this argument for any other group. I know you haven't. We all know you haven't. Everyone knows you haven't. You know you haven't. You know that I know you haven't.
Well, okay, it's fine that I haven't made any arguments in regards to that, but I think that should happen, right?
Yeah, you think everyone should find out the first bit of land that their ancestors lived on where someone got kicked out? So if I want, I should be allowed to go all the way back down my family tree. I should be able to go all the way back down my family tree and find out, okay, at some point, someone got kicked out of a house because, you know, human beings, unfortunately. And I just get to go to that bit of land and say, mate, 12 BC, sorry, get the fuck out of my land. And some arbitrary power can build a house for you somewhere else. I can do that. I reclaim Phoenicia for the Maronites.
Well, there is a morally, I would support that, sure. But I think
why?
If you allow me to speak,
why do you want to live in that world? That sounds fucking stupid.
But the opposite of that moral position is to say that Crimea belongs to Russia based on might makes right.
No one said might makes right. No, it's not about might makes right. No. Might doesn't make right. Might may have to
Russia, yes.
Not yet, because it's not solidified as part of Russia. I mean, it probably will. Let's face it. But if there's a chance to get it back, why the fuck not? What?
Morally, is it yes or no?
Depends on the circumstances. Like, yeah, morally.
Is Crimea Russian morally?
Morally, Ukraine should be allowed to take Crimea back, yeah.
Yes or no?
I just said yes. Why do you keep saying yes or no?
It's been 8 years since Russia has that land.
Why do you keep saying 8 years?
Yeah, it's for only.
It's been 10 years.
For
Did you listen? Did you listen to the? Did you listen to a debate that I had?
10 years, doesn't
Did
matter.
you listen to a debate that I had 2 years ago when Crimea was 8 years, and you just came in programmed to say 8 years and didn't think that 2 years have passed, that we are 2 years hence? I remember this happened in a debate like 2 years ago. That's where you got that from, right?
But then, yeah, I saw your debate with Madam.
So you're an NTC, yeah.
I'm asking these questions because it's important.
Yeah, I think Palestinians would have had a much stronger right to go and try and reclaim their homes 5 years after 48, but we're 75 years thence now. Israel is a country. Crimea is not recognized as part of Russia. The rest of the world is still given a bit of a fucking ambiguity around Crimea.
What if it was recognized as part of Russia? Is it then part of Russia?
At this rate, it probably has to be, because there's probably no chance of Ukraine ever taking it back, is there? It's quite unlikely, isn't it?
Morally, why?
Morally? Probably because the results of... Why are you laughing before I've answered the question? Morally, probably because the outcomes of trying to achieve a reclamation of Crimea would result in a lot more harm than letting it go, unfortunately. That's a really sad fact. It sets a pretty dangerous precedent, but what are you going to do? Is Ukraine going to invade Crimea? Crimea is a fucking fortress. Like, how many people would die for that? Would Ukraine even be willing to do that at that point? They haven't even fixed the Donbass or Zaporizhia and Kherson yet. So I don't know. I think Crimea is probably gone, unfortunately. It's a sad fact of reality.
We're talking about...
Huh?
Yeah, but we don't get our morals from what is actionable or not, right?
You partly do. Like, it would be morally better for everyone on Earth to live in a fucking mansion, but it's not...
So,
how you achieve that is like, okay. Does that not make sense? That, yeah, Ukraine should be allowed to have Crimea back, but it's not happening. It's not worth it. It's I don't know why you're, because I feel like I made this point consistently for the last 2 years. Why should they try to give it? I've already answered that. Hang on. Yeah, like you said as well, because earlier you said morals have in part to do with practicality as well. Yeah.
No, to a certain extent, when you're talking about the outcomes too, because I also care about outcomes. But what I'm saying is when we say Crimea, when you say Crimea is not Russian and Ukraine should get it back, I want to know why. Morally, why?
Because there's a...
When it's been 8 years since Russia has that land,
because there's a pretty dangerous precedent to set if you allow a country to forcefully invade and annex another country and keep it. Because that sets a precedent of saying, if other countries can just have enough people of the same ethnic group in there, then why wouldn't they go further? It's rewarding aggression. You don't really want to reward aggression unless you can help it.
What's the problem with that?
What's the problem with rewarding aggression? You might get more aggression. You're encouraging the
morally
act.
Speaking, you're not.
I know you keep saying morally when what you actually mean.
You're not giving a moral justification.
No. I know you keep saying moral when what you actually mean is this doesn't make sense with the definition of deontology that I discovered on Reddit 5 minutes ago. So I'm just going to keep saying morally like that means something. That's what you mean when you keep saying, oh, what about morally?
Well, no. You're saying that
because I think in the long-term goal of maximizing human, because in the long term, okay, let's go from a more foundational standpoint. So from a more foundational basis, in my grand quest to maximize human happiness and give everyone the best of all possible worlds, if you reward an act of military aggression from another country and allow them to annex territory for it, then that might encourage other countries with similar aspirations to do the same thing. So it probably helps in the world as much as we can do militarily to say that if you try to do this, you will suffer for it, you will not gain for it. Yes, because that means less territories get brutally annexed and people get fucking forced out or forcibly conscripted or put into fucking prisons, or where people who oppose what happened have their eyes gouged out in a forest. So that's my reason.
Yeah, but if, say, 20, 50, 60 years passes, okay, so say 50, 60 years passes, is Crimea still Russian?
Yeah, probably,
it's under control of Russia.
Yeah, it seems to be, yeah. I already said it looks like it's because, again, you can only do what's actionable, right? Like, you can only go so far.
Yeah, so morally, right, Crimea is Russian if an arbitrary wrinkle.
I mean, I don't know if it was right that I don't think it was right that I don't think that it was right that I don't think it was right that Native Americans all got thrown off their land and genocided like hundreds of years ago. But I hardly think we're returning the United States to the Native Americans, and any endeavor to do so would probably cause more harm than good. You'd probably prefer to just give them equal rights and support them through like welfare and integration and job market and all the rest of it, and empower them more, right?
Yeah, sure. Okay,
Do you think Russia should abolish itself?
pretty reasonable position. I'm not saying that it is
Thanks.
Russia. Well, I mean, I mean, if the people want to, sure.
Okay.
If there's, for example, a region of people who say, for example, like the Chechens, right? So this, if the Chechens would want to stay, right, independent from Russia, right, and they have pretty reasons, good reasons because of the war and all that, I think they should, yeah.
Okay.
I just don't think that Israel should exist morally because of the fundamental foundations were evil, right? But I don't think that everyone there should be like killed or anything. I just think that they should be moved into another house.
Do you think every country that was founded on violent terms should be abolished?
Sure, I don't believe in countries and all that stuff. I'm a universalist, right?
Yeah, so you want to do, so it's not just Israel specifically, right? This is like this is quite a lot of countries you want to do this to, right? Yeah.
Morally, yes. I mean, you would support that, I guess, right?
Support what?
Countries are being completely abolished, and so we can move in and have complete freedom of movement, right?
Yeah, but there's a bunch of reasons we can't do that right now. So I'm okay with countries existing for the very foreseeable future. I don't think we should be abolishing countries anytime soon. What's the first country you'd abolish? Is it anything other than Israel?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think I don't know. I think currently Russia and Israel are problems, right? And the U.S. is a problem too, by the way. But
Syria's a bit fucked up. Sudan's pretty fucked up. Morocco, China.
Sure. I mean,
Myanmar,
right?
Saudi Arabia.
Might not be plausible right now.
The Emirates.
Yeah,
There's a lot of countries doing bad shit right now. Congo.
What's the point, I mean, what's the point of asking?
The point in asking is you support the abolition of Israel. I'm like, people have been trying to do that. People have been trying to what?
I'm saying that morally, me and you agree on what I'm saying.
So wait, what would be the moral position then for?
Fundamentally, think that countries should be abolished too.
That really depends. Probably not, because right now there's good reasons to have countries.
Yeah, but right. I'm saying yes. Pragmatically speaking, right now you can't. But if ideally you could, you would do that, right?
Because I don't think you actually want to abolish Israel in the name of just abolishing all countries. I think you want to abolish Israel and turn it into Palestine. You want it all to be Palestine, right? You'd be okay with you'd think that's a step in the right direction for it to stop being Israel and for it to all be Palestine, right?
Sure. If you're talking about it pragmatically, yes. But on an idealistic scenario, I don't want any countries existing, right? But pragmatically, right? Someone could make an argument for abolishment of Russia too, right? Because of what they did to the Chechens, right? To prevent them from doing any more harm, right? Or the United States too, right?
Well, also even being just like Palestine, like why is this border the moral one for Palestine? Why is this better? This is a border that was drawn by British people. Like this border didn't exist before the British came there.
Depends. I mean, I'm not making any factual one. You just told me pragmatically speaking, I think that's what should happen currently. Like, I'm not very well read on the history or the border and all that stuff, because I ultimately think there shouldn't be any borders. But if you're just talking about it pragmatically, that's what I think about, right? In terms of pragmatism only. Ideally, there should be no borders.
Yeah, but unfortunately, political discussions get kind of boring when we're talking about countries fighting with each other and fighting over territory, and someone just comes in and says, "Oh, well, what if we've had no borders?" Like, okay, that sounds nice, but that's not really contributing anything to the discussion. It's like a dead end in the conversation. Like, like for example, here's a more interesting discussion. Like, if you think pragmatically,
because morally.
Like, here's an example of a more interesting discussion is, do you think pragmatically it'd be better to abolish Israel and have it turn into Palestine? Do you think the people who are currently trying to do that, Hamas, Hezbollah, do you think they're doing a good job of it? Do you think that's like a good way to go about it?
Well, I mean, their measures, I don't know that much about Hezbollah or care about them, because I think they rose up to fight against Israel colonization of Lebanon. So Hezbollah is different from Hamas.
Well, Hezbollah kept on firing rockets at Israel after they left. Well, after Israel left Lebanon, Hezbollah kept on firing rockets at them. So that's not, they're not there to fight the colonization of Lebanon, right? What the fuck? They won't even tell you that. They won't say that. They might say it sometimes, I guess, like around 2006.
But that doesn't make them No, but I didn't make the statement that they're fire rockets or is or not. I just say that they sprang up under different conditions, right? Very different conditions,
Yep.
right? Right. So, in regards to Hamas and Hezbollah, I think they're counterproductive, but I don't think that there's much choice in the practicality sense to do anything, right? You think that peaceful protest is going to stop Israel's colonization of the West Bank?
Well, Hamas didn't control the West Bank. They were present, but they don't control the West Bank. I'm talking about Gaza. Do you think Hamas were going the right way about
Yeah,
things
well,
from
that's
Gaza?
important.
Huh?
No, sure,
No. What do you think they should have done?
no, but I don't think that Hamas is the party to be blamed because I don't put the blame on them. I just consider their actions to be counterproductive,
Why?
right?
They're adults. They're leaders who have
And
lots
evil,
of
right?
power and privilege. Like I'm not asking you whether or not you blame them. I'm just asking, like, if you seem to have this
Yeah,
idea that
we
Israel should be abolished because it was founded on sin, what should it be like? Do you think the efforts to replace it? So I think you think what Hamas and Hezbollah do is not pragmatic, but you also think they have no other choice. Like Hamas had no other choice but to fire rockets from Gaza into Israel.
well, that's what I think because I don't think that that stops the colonization of the West Bank if there's peaceful protest. I don't. I think violence. I don't oppose violence on principle because there's a right and there's a wrong, right?
Do
And
you
if
think
someone
October
like a
7th
police
stopped?
officer
Do you think October 7th helped
trying to
stop
stop
the?
somebody from killing another person,
How do rockets and cross-border raids help with what's happening in the West Bank? I feel like what's happening in the West Bank is getting worse now under the cover of war.
well, they bring attention to the people so that the problem can be solved. I mean, the reason that Israel is taking over the West Bank slowly is because it is allowed because there's not much attention paid into that area.
Yeah,
But
so
if people
that
pay
seems
much
like
more
Hamas's
attention to that
actions.
area,
That
there's
seems
many
like,
eyes.
but that seems like Hamas's actions made it worse. No, I mean they clearly
Well, it
made it
depends
worse,
on
right?
what
Like
you
because it
mean in
resulted in
terms of
fucking
the
40,000
losses.
people
Sure.
dying, right? What?
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with what you just said. I just said that you just talked about launching rockets and all that. I just said that violence under colonialism is justified. It's not saying
All
that every
violence?
single action that you take, for example, October 7th is. But what do you mean all violence?
Well, that's why you said violence under colonialism is justified. But as far as in the West Bank, I'd agree with you to an extent. I think there are forms of violence that Palestinians can take in the West Bank that make perfect moral sense. For Gaza, I'm just not sure because the Israeli military were not inside Gaza before October 7th. And the blockade, I feel like that could have been, there'd be a much better case for removing the blockade if Hamas were not smuggling in weapons and firing rockets at Israel. I feel like it would have been easier to do it that way, but they
So,
didn't.
so if Israelis came in and stole the land from the people who live there, the people there have a reason and justified reason to fight back, even though if they don't control that territory. Like you think that Ukraine should fight to Crimea, even though Crimea has been Russian for a long time,
Yeah, but the people in Gaza are not
right?
the people in Gaza are not firing rockets or launching violent attacks into Israel because they think they're going to get Israeli land back. If Ukraine's solution to
Well, why are
Crimea,
they doing that?
if Ukraine's solution to Crimea was just to fire rockets at random cities in Crimea full of civilians, what the fuck? That would be a pretty bad thing to do. As far as their targeting goes in Crimea right now, they're targeting things that are relevant to the war effort, not just like music festivals and shit.
Yeah, sure, I agree, and that's why I said Hamas's positions are counterproductive. All I'm saying that is inherently there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. It's just a certain action.
The problem with what they're doing is that they cause a lot of harm and nothing good comes out of it, apart from what media attention from people who have no political
You
power.
say
So,
it
yeah.
appears to me this is not justified, and I brought it up and said,
Mm.
well, no, yeah, but that's
Out of
important, right?
interest, because
It's
I've
important that people in the U.S. are holding politics. That's important in the long term, right?
out of interest because
Even
I've
this conversation wouldn't be happening if they didn't do that.
yeah, but unfortunately, I don't think it was maybe worth that many people dying so that you and I could have a conversation about it. I mean, I was having conversations about it before October 7th. They didn't need to do that for me to talk about it.
I'm not, yeah, sure, but what about the broader American public? Look at the students, right? Would they bring so much attention to this had it not happened?
Yeah, but they're
And
pushing completely incoherent
I'm not
demands that are
saying
never
that
going to
to
get through
justify
Congress.
Hamas's
Yeah.
actions, but I'm saying that those things are justified.
Um,
That's fine. Their position is morally correct. Do you agree with that or not. They don't need to have a 10-point plan as to how to abolish Israel. They just need to have the correct moral position,
Their
right?
position that Israel should be an Islamic state from the river to the sea.
Well, I don't think that that's their position ideally.
That's
I
literally
think
what
if you're
they
talking to
say.
an
But
average liberal American, he's a secular. Not a.
no, I'm talking about Hamas, not Americans.
You think that they're advocating for? Huh? What about Hamas? I don't think Hamas's positions are the best positions. I don't support Hamas positions.
Okay. I'm just curious because I don't often get to talk to tankies anymore. But what do you think of the idea if someone said something like, I can't remember who this quote came from, but if someone said, what if someone just said, like, let's be frank, we cannot destroy Israel. The practical solution is for us to have a state alongside Israel. When we build a Palestinian state, we will not need these militias. Needs for attack will stop. Everything will change into a civil life. What do you think about, do you think that's maybe a better alternative for Gaza? Like if they had built themselves up to become as much of a state as possible so that there's no need for a blockade or more fighting, at least between Gaza and Israel? Do you think that would have been maybe better for the people who live there than what we have now?
Well, okay, but do you think that it would be better if there would be one state solution? That would be my answer.
Well, there's no, like, the way to achieve a one-state solution would be very, very different from what I just laid out. People in Gaza, if they have enough humanitarian aid money, or they did before October 7th, they have enough help. If they had devoted themselves, Hamas, towards building up like civilian life in Gaza and not building hundreds of miles of stupid fucking tunnels and rockets and misfiring munitions or whatever the fuck else, then life in Gaza would probably be a lot better than it is now, or even before October 7th. And also, Israel would look a lot worse having a blockade because, well, why would you blockade an area that's not attacking you? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but again, as I said, like it doesn't really matter in this regard. So when someone makes that pragmatic argument, my argument is, for example, that if there's a two-state solution, and this is my problem, there's going to be a line within the deal that says that Palestinians have to recognize Israel's existence. And when you do that, right, that means that they're conceding to their lands being stolen from them, right? And that's like, for example, Ukraine recognizing Crimea as Russian, right? So I don't accept that. That's why I don't accept the two-state solution, is because of that. It's because I think Palestinians do deserve to return to their homes. And when you say that they should recognize that, the Palestinians should recognize Israel's existence, you're conceding that. You're saying that, well, no, if you come in and steal people's homes based on no justification but mine makes right, that's fine, right? We are conceding that. And I think that's from a defeated position. And that's what's immoral. That's what's bothering me. And it's a problem.
The difference is between Crimea and this. First of all, if Ukraine had managed to get the rest of the East back and then they were stuck with Crimea, it's too difficult to invade. And 20, 30, 40 years later, they decide, okay, this was fucked up. Like, we should probably draw the line here and at least we'll have peace. I think that's probably better than the alternative of Ukraine fighting for 75 years to get Crimea back, like, personally. But we're talking, again, 10 years versus 75. And we're also talking about, let's face it, Israelis are not like Russian settlers in Crimea who have moved in where they can just go across the border and go back home, right? Most of the Israelis were born there. 80% of them, Israeli Jews, were born there. They don't have anywhere else to go. They were refugees themselves, quite a lot of them actually, you know, from pogroms and the Holocaust and whatever the fuck else. So I think expecting them to leave is a bit ridiculous as well. There are two national groups living on this piece of land.
Yeah, but I haven't said that they should leave, right? All I said is that Palestinians should be able to get their homes back while other homes are built for Israelis. Right?
Okay, and who the fuck is enforcing this? Do you think that's a serious proposal in this world? Do you think that's like a serious thing to consider? What authority in a one-state solution is going to, I guess, hand over all the military and political authority over to the Palestinian side and then just start going around houses and evicting Israelis and putting Palestinians back there, whilst also being very nice to the evictees because, you know, they're descended from the Nakba. They're not actually the ones who did it themselves. And then just like building another house for them and treating them all equally. What fucking world is this? Like, this is fantasy. And you can fantasize as much as you want. I love that for you, that you're able to do that. But at the end of the day, people are stateless and they're suffering. I don't know why the fuck you would say, like, for example, if there was the offer tomorrow to have two states, if it involves recognizing Israel, but you'll say, oh, no, because, like, I don't know, like, the house that isn't even there anymore. What the I mean, that's fine for you, but if you want to throw a bunch of other fucking Arabs into a fucking machine gun for another 75 years as they try to reclaim all of Israel for this weird fantasy that you've come up with, I mean, good luck, but I prefer when Arabs don't die.
Yeah, the position is a moral position, and you.
Yeah, and my moral position is I don't like it when Arabs die or when they go through endless experience of statelessness because dickheads are so attached to this idea that someday the river to the sea will finally be reclaimed and we'll put the key back into the lock of the old house, which is now rubble, and we'll get it back, and we'll be very nice to the people who we took the houses from and just build other houses for them somewhere else. There definitely won't be any like persecution to Israeli Jews while that happened. Like what the yeah, my morals are, you know, typically connected a little bit to reality. Yeah, I think that's probably a good thing. Yeah.
Those things on principle. Yeah, but you don't oppose any of the things that you just said on principle.
On principle, what? Evicting Israelis and just building a house next door for them. Yeah, I oppose that on principle. It's stupid. Yeah. We don't do this for any other refugee group, and there's a good reason, because attempting to do this would cause more harm than good. And I don't like it when people get harmed, generally. Like, it's not good. So yes, I oppose that on principle, yes.
So you oppose evictions on principle?
I oppose what, sorry?
Evictions on principle?
Evictions on principle.
You oppose evictions on principle?
Yeah, where we can stop them, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you setting me up for something there?
So say that, for example, well, I mean, if somebody comes into your home, right, and just sits there, do you think that he should be evicted?
No, that's an exception. Yeah, there are times when you can evict people, or if they don't pay their rent, there are times when you can evict people, yeah, or if they're like squatting.
Right, so it's not an opposition on principle, right?
Yeah, but that's if someone's done something. That's because if someone's violated something. But an Israeli who's just renting a flat in Tel Aviv, I don't know what principle they violated to get evicted. Also, it's not an eviction if you kick out an intruder. That's not really an eviction. That's just like getting someone out of your house who's in your house.
It's an eviction. You're evicted.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what eviction means.
It's more of an expulsion.
So you don't oppose that on principle, right? So if I don't care about semantics. So if say that there is the Ukrainian army that's forcefully removing Ukrainian civilians from an area, and then Russia is going to, for example, nuke in a hypothetical, right? You don't think that that's something that you would be opposed to, right? You wouldn't say that that's evil, what the Ukrainian soldiers are doing, right?
Ukrainian soldiers doing what, sorry? Your mic is shit. Say that again?
Okay. So if there's Ukrainian soldiers taking out Ukrainian civilians, right, from their homes, evicting them from their homes, to move them into a safer area, would you say that that's something you would be opposed to?
No. It's more of an evacuation, but yeah, okay, so I don't have... like I said, I already said at the beginning, I know this is, again, we're in the Reddit philosophy. When you asked me if I oppose evictions...
There's no problem.
Sorry, when you asked me if I oppose evictions on principle, I think my words were, generally I'm against the idea of evicting people. I didn't know we were going into some, like, autistic shithole where, because you said on principle, oh, I actually mean I have a hard rule against evicting anyone. Sorry. Maybe we got confused. Can we come out of the Reddit debate bro world and go back into the reality where you're talking about specifically evicting Israelis who have not committed crimes, who were not the ones who kicked people out of their houses in the 48 war. They're people who were born there. Yeah, I don't support the idea of evicting them so that someone can go back to the exact square foot of land that they came from. I think that makes no sense.
Okay, so if there's someone who's very poor in your, say, area, and he comes into your home, right, and he just sits there without your permission or anything, should that person be kicked out of your home?
Yeah, probably, at some point. Yeah. I guess you just weren't listening to anything I said about evictions.
It's like there's no opposition, there's no moralization. Right, so there's no moralization there. So when you're evicting an Israeli, it's not that they're evil, right? It's because that they're doing, they're in a house that is stolen, right?
No, not necessarily. No.
So you think that all evictions have a moral behind them? So is the person?
Okay, I need you to stop. I need you to stop using the word
evil. Right?
I need you to stop using the word moral. Okay, because whoever taught you moral philosophy or wherever you think you've learned it from is like this is like a completely different language you're speaking to me right now, the way you're using these words, okay? You're asking me why I'm against evicting Israelis so that Palestinians' descendants from the 48 war can go and get the exact square foot of land back, okay? Let's just talk about that practically, okay? Let's just talk about that as a policy in the real world and why it's stupid, okay?
Right. And you're saying,
Sorry?
you morally oppose it. I need to know why you morally oppose that. You don't oppose it based on practicality, right? You oppose it morally.
Yeah. Well, again, I don't think you don't seem to understand, I guess, because you're a Reddit deontologist. I don't think you get the idea that what is morally acceptable is not disconnected completely from its outcomes to me. It's kind of like saying like, oh, you oppose that because it would result in more human suffering. But I want to know why you oppose it morally. You're not asking me about morals. You're asking me about your specific deontological framework that I don't sign up to.
Yeah, what I'm asking you is that if there is an eviction, right, it has nothing to do with the person. It has to do with the thing being stolen. So if an Israeli is evicted, he's not evil, right? So if I'm evicting somebody, I'm not making a moral judgment on them, right?
No, what we're talking about is a war, okay? We're talking about a war where multiple people are displaced. Some of them are forcibly evicted. Some of them flee. Some of them leave because they want to wait out the war. For whatever reason, they leave. They can't go back. And then you sit there and you go, okay, we've got refugees. This is a problem, okay? Because people shouldn't be refugees. They should be citizens of a country. So what do? Well, then we think, okay, what's the quickest way to help them to stop being a refugee so that they can live a normal life? And then you decide, well, what we do now, which I think makes sense, is that you either help them to rehabilitate and repatriate or reintegrate into a different place where they are, like say in the country that they fled to, which is why no one opposes, or no one on the left at least, opposes the idea of Syrian refugees becoming citizens of France or the UK or Germany. By the same token, I think when people arrive in Jordan or the West Bank or Gaza or Lebanon, I think it makes sense that if they can't return home, it seems to be that the best thing to do would be to help them reintegrate into the country that they have ended up in, like Lebanon, Jordan, or Syria, or whatever. I think that makes sense. Or if they can return, we are returned to their country, especially if it's passing it generationally down to their kids. Yeah, then we are returned to the country. If they were kicked out of Palestine, yeah, I think they got a right to go back to Palestine. Do they have a right to go to the house that they never actually saw themselves, that their grandfather was renting, that isn't even there anymore? No, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, why not? Why is evicting an Israeli morally wrong? What's wrong with just evictions?
Because attempting to achieve
what is wrong with you evicting somebody?
Because attempting to achieve this for 7 million people will only cause a shitload of harm. It won't help anyone, okay? And I don't like that kind of level.
The harm
I don't like of evicting 7 million people. Of forcibly evicting 7 million people.
It's a process, right?
It's a process by which...
It's a process.
What happens in the process?
It doesn't have to be 7 million exactly at that time.
Okay, 1 million.
Yeah,
half a million.
People get evicted. That's fine. Right. There is no problem with evictions, right?
There's problems with some evictions. Do you think the 48 evictions were justified?
Say that let me give you this example. Say that if you
Do you
steal
think
the phone...
the 48 evictions were justified?
So
There's nothing wrong with evictions.
What happened in those evictions? What happened?
There was a war that was unfortunately started by Arab leaders, by al-Husseini and his guys and the Arab armies, or the, whatever you call it, the ALA. And the Israelis, in some cases, a lot of people fled, okay? Middle and upper class people just left because they wanted to wait out the war. In other cases, the Zionist militias, like the Irgun and the Haganah and the Lehi, went to villages and forced people out. They shot bullets over their heads and made them flee. Some cases there were massacres, people fled. Some people heard about the massacres in other places and ran away. Other people fled when there was the Haganah advancing on their village. So that's how they left, yes. By the same token that a couple of thousand Jews had to leave the West Bank.
Right, so what was your question in regards to this matter?
My question was, you keep doing this thing where you say, well, evictions are fine. There's nothing morally wrong with evictions inherently. Well, I'm saying... You clearly think there's problems with some evictions. What you're advocating for with evicting millions of Israelis and having Palestinian refugees go to that exact spot, I would say that's probably not a moral eviction, no.
And why not?
2 wrongs don't make a right.
Yeah, why?
Why do you think, I would say? Because I've told you like 40 times
Why?
now.
Why is evicting Israelis? Why is those evictions wrong?
Yeah,
What's
no,
wrong
I've told you a
with it?
million
What's
times. I've told you a million
morally wrong?
times. I want to
Like,
see if you've
what
been.
makes that wrong?
I want to see if you've been paying attention. What do you think I would say? What
I
do you think
mean,
my
you're
answer is to
making
that question?
consequentialist arguments, right? So
Yep.
you would say that the consequences of that will be bad,
Yep.
right? But I'm saying that by the mere why? What do you mean the consequences will be bad? What will happen?
Because you normally need a level of force.
By virtue of just evicting people?
Yeah, you probably need a level of force to evict people. Yeah, evictions are not normally nice things. Most people tend to want to stay in the places that they live. Yeah.
Sure, but you don't oppose force. You don't oppose that on principle too, right?
Not in principle, but we're talking about forcibly evicting people who didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
If their crime is what being born there, yeah.
Yeah, but force. Yeah, that's not. They haven't committed a crime. But say if I say there is someone who's a someone who's a thief, right? And he steals something from me, and if he gives it to the kid, right?
Yeah.
And the
I know you've
police
heard
go
this as well before,
forcibly
yeah.
take that from the kid.
You come up with this one yourself as
right?
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way we do property.
Yeah, this is a simple moral question, right?
So the way we do again, because I feel like the action of returning the thing that was given to the kid, even though the kid didn't steal it, is probably a bit more doable and a bit more doable without causing that much harm than someone who is born in a country and they pay rent for a fucking flat and everything. Like, did the kid buy that thing that they've got stolen? Or so?
Yeah,
yeah.
no,
I feel like it's quite. If someone takes my fucking, if someone takes my toothbrush and gives it to their friend, getting the toothbrush back from that friend, it's probably not going to be too difficult. Okay. If someone takes my toothbrush and then they run across the border and I die and they die and their kid inherits the toothbrush and my kid is born, I don't know if my kid has the right to go over to that country and get a cop to seize the toothbrush back. Do you see the difference there? I think living in a world where you could enforce rules like that is fucking retarded.
Is the toothbrush not stolen?
Yeah, technically is. Yeah.
If the toothbrush is stolen, right? Yeah. So if it has the status stolen, and if you take it from somebody, there's no problem with any. And then the kid says, "My father owned this, and it belongs to my father, and this thing is stolen." Nothing against you, but this should be mine, and it is mine.
Yeah. How much of the Arab world is stolen?
Yeah, you seem to be. Hold on. You seem to be making the argument of saying that, well, if you're an Israeli, right, and somebody comes and evict you, you haven't done anything wrong, or the Israelis haven't done anything wrong for happening to be born in this house, right?
Yep.
But I'm not saying that they're evil for happening to be born in the house.
The only difference is as well is assuming that the land is stolen, because I guarantee in each case, we don't even know who owned the land before. Like, was the land owned by whoever lived there? Probably not. Was it owned by the British state? Was it owned by the Ottomans before? Was it state property? Was it owned by like a wealthy landowner who lived in Beirut or Cairo? Or was it actually a genuine like homeowner who had the land deed from the Ottoman Empire? It could have been any of those things. Do those matter to you? You're talking about people who might have been renting, because I imagine most of the 700,000 people, and you know this as well, they were not the landowners. Most of them would not have been the owners.
Yeah, but I'm not making a legalistic argument.
But you're trying to compare it to a toothbrush, like property.
No, but it's a moral one, right? Not a legalistic one.
Where do you think laws come from?
So you think that, for example,
where do you think laws come from?
Say there was.
Why do we make laws?
Some of them are made up by people. Okay, so there's laws that were socially constructed. Some of the laws reflect morality, right? So
I mean, yeah, laws generally
socially constructed
morality.
Laws, right?
Yeah, well, all laws are socially constructed, but yeah, they are.
Yeah, but not all of them, right? Generally, yes.
Yeah, laws are based on morality, not the other way around.
Yeah, but they're not moral, right?
They're moral to someone.
Moral, right?
A law is more like
the laws are irrelevant to morality.
If there's a law, it was moral to someone. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not morality itself, right? A law isn't morality itself.
It's not the objective morality.
No, morality generally. So if there's a law, doesn't mean morality, right?
No, but it might be a good indicator.
So if Hitler signs "Go out there and kill 6 million Jews," doesn't make it moral, right?
No, it makes it moral to Hitler, but just not moral to most people. Yeah, I think Hitler probably thought killing Jews was moral.
Yeah,
right? That's why he wanted to do it.
Differentiation ontological.
Okay, and then in that case, you would argue with him about why it's not moral. But again, I keep telling you why I think it's not moral to do this. I keep on invoking the human suffering that it would entail, and that's where my morals come from.
What?
But you're just going in circles because I don't think you've thought any farther beyond the talking points that you stole from a debate 2 years ago. I don't know. I feel like I've given you the answer a million times. I keep saying it's against my morals because I'm against I said I'm against this particular position morally because if you applied it as a general moral rule, it would cause a ridiculous amount of fighting and human suffering. It would mean that basically anyone who is able to trace themselves back to a person who got evicted at some point, which let's face it, is millions of people, and then going and then kicking out whatever poor soul happens to live there. I think that's stupid because that would cause a ridiculous amount of human suffering. It's massively impractical. It wouldn't happen. That's all. Okay, that's it. How what?
How?
Are you asking me how it would hurt people or?
Okay, so you're saying, yeah, how would it hurt people?
Okay. It would hurt people.
Palestinians returning to their homes. How would it hurt the people?
Oh, how would it hurt people? How would it hurt people? Because Israelis would suffer. By the same token that Palestinians would suffer under this as well, by the way. Because there is some stolen land on
suffering in of itself isn't bad.
I think suffering being imposed on you when you're innocent.
If they suffer a little bit, so if
imposing suffering on innocence is generally bad, no?
Yeah, but it's not about the person being evil. That's what I'm established. So, suffering.
Okay, well, that's your morals. I think your morals are fucking stupid.
If and you don't
listen. The fact is, you don't agree with any of this. You don't agree with any of this because that would mean again, it's okay.
What?
It would be okay for every Mizrahi Jew to go back to Morocco, Libya, fucking Algeria, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, and to evict any cunt who happens to live there, because they've all multiplied as well now. There are millions of them, and they evict anyone forcibly who happens to be on that land, and just hopefully someone else builds them a house, I guess. Like, yeah, you would never accept this. You don't believe in this. You believe in this for one group.
Yeah, it's that position. I don't know. It's that position.
Can you acknowledge that that's the world? Can you acknowledge that that's the world you would live in? Can you acknowledge that that's the world that you would live in if your morals were applied?
Palestinians shouldn't be able to return because there's going to be evictions.
Can you accept that this is the moral standard you accept? This would give
and can you acknowledge
this would give Mizrahi Jews this would give Mizrahi Jews the right to evict millions of Arabs around the Arab Muslim world, Middle East and North Africa, so they can get their square foot of land back, right? You understand that that's okay, that this is
and can you acknowledge
so you just advocated for evicting millions of Arabs who did not do anything wrong. Yeah, can you acknowledge that? You're okay with millions of Iraqis, of Kurds, of Lebanese people, of Syrians, all getting evicted by people like Ben Gvir. Because these people are right-wing as fuck.
What your point is, man. Can I speak?
Can you acknowledge that your morals would be okay with that happening?
Yeah, it's that position, okay? It's that position.
Okay,
hold on.
You're an Arab hater. Get out. I don't like Arab haters in my chat. Go away. Fuck me. Oh, God, I'm so triggered. Whatever, it's fine.